Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking about Blueprint construction scripts, and we're going to use that to create a repeater which will allow me to create multiple instances of a static mesh within a level. Let me show you what I'm talking about, and then I'll show you the blueprint code to do this. It's very simple and it's very powerful when you're creating levels so that you're not placing a lot of different meshes and trying to do all the alignment, etc. So let me just first show you it, and then I'll show you the blueprint. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in my blueprint class. It's called a repeater. So I'm going to drag this into place. And you see on the repeater we have a few options. So we have a count, a material, and a mesh. Plus we have an offset, a scale, and rotation, and this thing called mirror. Now you could organize these a little better in your blueprint code, but I just did it real quick to show you the basics. So the first thing I'm going to do is today I'm going to drag in what I have a static mesh I call a pillar. So it's just like a column. And I'm also going to drag in just a sample material that I have. This is called, let's see, we'll use this one. It is an instance of some stone. Okay, so let me show you some of the basics of the repeater. So when we first start out, we have our repeater, we've assigned a basic material to it, and we have our basic shape. So the first thing we want to do is add an offset. So if I want to go in the Y direction, okay, you'd simply add let me get rid of this mirror flag, I'll show you that in a second. But you simply add, increase the Y offset, and as you change or lower it, you see how that behaves. If you want it then to also mirror in the negative Y for each item in the positive Y, so you choose the mirror option. When you mirror it, then anything that's on this side goes on the other side. So in this case, we have a count of 10, which means 10 will be on the positive side, 10 will be on the negative side. Now, conversely, if you scale this down, you'll see if I go in the negative Y direction, right? So now negative Y will mirror in the positive Y direction. So if I undo mirror here, now this side goes away. So that's just a simple feature. Let me get rid of the mirroring for the minute, and I'll increase this back to being positive. So now we have our items here for every instance. So basically the offset you can think of for every instance, it's going to add that much to its offset. So in the case of Z, if I want it to go up for every instance by 20 centimeters, then this is the feature you get. If I want it to come forward towards me in the positive X, I can increase that. And now you see that this is not only going up, but it's also moving forward. This can be useful for, let's say, stairs or ramps or anything like that. Let me reset this. Okay. Some other cool things that you can do is, so let's say you don't want to use this mesh, you want to swap it out for a different mesh. So I can pick so let's try this. It kind of looks like a bell. You'll see it in a second. So I add this, now I get a bell. Then if I want to take this and add, let's say, some material, here I'll put like a bronze material on it. So now I have a bronze looking bell. Although that texture doesn't match this very well, but you get the idea. So then you can change, let me go back to something that is, let's say square. So I'll come back to this. All right. And let's say I want to make, instead of these being so skinny, I want them to be fatter. So I can increase the scale on the X and Y axis, and now they're much fatter. If I want to make them taller, I can increase the scale on the Z axis. Now let's say I want to rotate them. I can rotate them on the Z axis, which allows me to change them, their orientation that way. If I wanted to rotate them, let's say on the X axis. So if X is this way, if I rotate them, remember they're going to pivot around their origin, but that could be a cool effect right there. And then if you take that in conjunction with some other rotation, you can get some, interesting types of layouts. Lots of stuff to play with. Very, very fun, very easy, and this makes lining up your objects much easier, especially if you have a lot of them. So that's it. That is the big demonstration, and now let me show you the blueprint. So here is my blueprint repeater, okay? All I have in this, I have the default scene root. I created this based off of an actor. So the parent class to this blueprint is an actor, which is a good thing. And inside, I have an instance static mesh. So you just do add component, type in instance. So, yep, and there's your instance static mesh. You could also use a hierarchical instance static mesh. They're very similar. You can go do some reading about the differences between the two. In my use case, instance static mesh is fine. So looking at the code here, let me show you. So I'm using the construction script for my blueprint. And what I'm doing is, that way it's at construction time. What I'm doing is I'm looking to see, the first thing I have is a branch. I look to see how many items I have, and I compare it to the last time I instantiated how many items I have. I did this because when you have lots of items that you're creating, for example, let's say 1,000, it can be, if you start moving your object around, it will constantly call this construction script, and therefore constantly be regenerating the meshes, and it kind of slows down the editor pretty good. So what I do is I say, if I'm just moving it around, don't bother recreating all the meshes, just leave them alone. But if I change the count, then go ahead and rebuild everything. So inside of here, I have my instance static mesh, and I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to set the static mesh. So this is where I was choosing the pillar to add to it. So here you can use any static mesh that you want. The way I have it set up, you just apply it, and mesh, as you can see, is one of the variables down here, and it's a static mesh. So I set the static mesh, then I also set the material for the instance static mesh, so that way you can change the material on your mesh. If you had a mesh that had multiple materials, then you would want to add some additional code here to apply more than one material. I could leave that as an exercise for you. Probably just an array of materials, and then you can apply them based off their index. That would be fine. The next thing I do is I clear the instances created in an instance static mesh. So this instancing allows you to render multiple meshes quickly with as little overhead as possible. Because we're recreating the component each time, you want to clear out all of the previous instances. Otherwise, you'll just keep adding to a list of instances. Then, real simply, I go into a for loop for the number of items. So I go from 1 to the count. For each one of those, so in my loop body, what I'm doing is I'm adding an instance to our instance static mesh. So I'm saying this, I want one instance to be created. And the way I'm doing it is, there's 3 things you need. You need the location, the rotation, and the scale. So the location is equal to the current index minus 1. So on our first instance, it's going to be at 0, 0, 0. Then we are going to multiply that number. So on the very first instance, it's going to be 0 times whatever this is. And its instance is going to be at 0. The next time it comes through, we're going to multiply the offset. So remember, let me just switch back real quick. The offset is equal to what our, down here. So this offset, this tells you how far apart you want each instance to be in each axis, right? So X, Y, and Z. So when you multiply that offset by the number that it is, when you multiply the offset by that, the instance number, you will get how far away it is. So, for example, the first time you go through here, it's 50 centimeters away. The second instance will be 100. The third instance will be 150, etc. The next thing is your rotation. So again, you can change the rotation, and I plug that in. The scale also, you can. That's just plugged in through the parameters that are set on the actor for this blueprint. You could easily add a randomize function in here. You could easily do randomized functions for the location even, or the scale. You could also create upper and lower boundaries. You know, a lot of potential here for improvement. The next thing is my mirror function. So remember, we're looping through each instance, and if I add one instance, if I have my mirror options set, then I'm going to add another instance on the opposite side. So that's where I take the location that I'm going to be putting it at, and I negate it. So it's on the opposite side of the axis, right? So just by negating it, you end up with the other location. Rotation and scale are going to be whatever it is that's configured, and you add in your second instance. And that, my friends, is it. It is that simple. This is what it looks like overall, but it's a really simple thing. The last thing I do at the very end is I set my last count variable to the count that I've updated. And this is just my little mechanism for limiting the number of updates that occur when the construction strip is repeatedly called. For example, when you're moving your object around. That wraps up another video, folks. I hope you enjoyed today's content. And I wanted to give a big thank you to all of my current subscribers. It really inspires me when you guys sign up and are interested in these types of things like I am. I hope you have a great day. Bye.